I pledge
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Supervisors Molinaro and Elverman are excused. We will open it up to citizens' comments. Any citizens wishing to speak? You'll have 5 minutes. State your name and address for the record.
I'm Florence Hamilev, and I live at 3018 86th Street, Unit 203 in Kenosha. And I'm here representing CUSH, Congregations United to Serve Humanity. I'm here to ask for your support for the resolution being presented this evening. It is to support alternative treatment courts. This board has already approved special courts, drug court, veterans court, and soon we will have a new behavioral health court. Money is needed to sustain these courts. We need increased funding in the state budget. Treatment alternative and diversion programs, TAD programs, are proven effective here and around the country. Wisconsin must invest in what works. Research has proven and confirms that for every dollar invested in these courts, $2 is saved. 2 research studies to consider are one done by the La Follette School of Public Affairs at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and one done by Human Impact Partners, a nonpartisan nonprofit organization. The $1.3 billion currently spent on corrections in Wisconsin cannot be sustained. This is up from $200 million in 1990. There is a better way, and Wisconsin must invest in what works. On April 30th, the State Criminal Justice Coordinating Council met under the leadership of Co-Chair Attorney General J.B. Van Hollen. This council unanimously endorsed TAD expansion and will be recommending to Wisconsin leaders in the coming weeks funding for expansion. Increasing funding in the state budget is supported by both the Department of Corrections Secretary and the State Attorney General, as well as all representatives of the State Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Our statewide wisdom organization was commended for the work we've been doing in this area. The Kenosha County Board can take a leadership position in the state by supporting the proposed resolution presented this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Barb DeBerg-Henken, and I live at 6805 22nd Avenue. And I am here also, like Florence, to support CUSH and the new resolution for more treatment alternatives. I'm speaking on behalf of a personal issue. I was a volunteer in the county jails for about 5-6 years, and as a volunteer, I would see the women repeatedly come in with no alternatives besides jail time. And it tore apart their families and their whole, what are they going to do with their life when they get out, and nothing was offered to help them for many, many of them. And also the mentally ill patients that were non-criminal offenders and non-violent offenders that came in and repeatedly like a rotating door. And I experienced that, and it was very sad to watch these women being torn apart from their families with no alternatives once they leave there. I'm here to speak for treatments prior to jail sentences. I also am here to speak about a personal experience with one of my family members who was my daughter, who was incarcerated time after time after time for possession of drugs. And after so many arrests, she was sent to prison, which was where she got her treatment to help with her addiction. Most of the women in there don't have support like we have, and to get them into treatment prior to prison would save tax dollars, and it would also save their families, which also will help the taxpayers. So I'm here speaking for Cush and for my own personal experience. So I ask for your support with this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Veronica King. I live at 5518 34th Avenue, Kenosha. I'm here on behalf of Cush, Congregations United to Serve Humanities. I'm also president of the Kenosha branch NAACP, and I'm a social worker and a clinical substance abuse counselor. So I see firsthand on a daily basis at work through the Wisconsin Department of Corrections the need for funding for treatment alternatives and diversion. For years, I was a Kenosha County social worker for 10 years, and I worked with delinquent youth. And I went back to school to get the certification in licensing to become a clinical substance abuse counselor because I felt that I wasn't reaching the youth as effectively as I felt I should. So I went back and got the additional education so that I could be more effective in the work that I do. So I'm asking you to support the additional funding needed for treatment alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jane Davis. My address is 1630 56th Street, Kenosha, Wisconsin. That is the address of the first Kenosha Women's Oxford House. I'm here to discuss the Oxford House concept, specifically our house here in Kenosha. I was employed gainfully for 24 years as a mechanical engineer. I then lost my job, lost my home, and then was incarcerated several times, all alcohol related. I am now an officer in that Oxford House and working on getting an AODA certificate to help others who have gone through my situation. Oxford Houses provide proven, sober living options for the individual with substance abuse issues who is re-entering the community after incarceration. Oxford Houses support the 11 by 15 goal to halve Wisconsin's prison population by 2015. They provide an alternative living environment which assists in reuniting families, rebuilding communities, and giving our brothers and sisters in Wisconsin a second chance at life. Oxford Houses work for those participating in drug court programs or getting out of jail. Many of the 1,200 Oxford Houses established since 1989 have a working relationship with drug courts and correctional treatment programs. Oxford Houses are a prime example of how alternatives to incarceration work better than jail or prison for reducing crime and getting people on the right track at a much lower cost. Funds invested in Oxford Houses represent a much better return on investment than funds spent on jails and prisons. Investments in Oxford Houses includes funds for rental assistance, for startup funds via the Recovery Home Revolving Loan Fund, that's 42 USC 300X-25, and for outreach worker technical assistance from Oxford House World Services. Oxford Houses, Inc. is the 501c3 nonprofit umbrella organization of the National Network of Individual Oxford Houses. The income is used to expand the network of Oxford Houses by providing trained outreach workers to establish new houses and to provide central service support to existing houses and to work with participating organizations to accept referred individuals. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Lois Day. My address is 6724 27th Avenue in Kenosha. Tonight I'm here to speak in support of the resolution in support of alternative treatment courts. On November 5th, 2012, my son's life changed forever. At 22, he was convicted of a drug felony for possession of drugs, drug paraphernalia. After 3 years of trying to fight his heroin addiction, the only way out in his mind was to end his life. I called the police. He was arrested. The only choice I felt I had left. He spent 8 months in Rockford, Illinois, at the Rockford Rescue Mission, getting his life back. He got a second chance. He didn't end up in jail. He's not a criminal nor a bad person. He's a young man, like so many others that make poor choices. The people affected by his choices were himself and his family. Corey could have ended up in jail behind bars. Instead, he is actively searching for employment, which is very difficult when you have to check that little box that says you've been convicted of a drug felony. He spent the past 3 months volunteering his time coaching middle school wrestlers. The head coach gave him a second chance. Together, they're now in the process of developing a wrestling program to keep at-risk youth engaged in positive activities this summer. Corey is giving back to the community. On June 23rd, Corey will celebrate 2 years drug-free. Currently, Treatment Alternatives and Diversions, the TAD programs, operate in only 7 of Wisconsin's 72 counties because of limited state funding. With your vote, you can help to bring funding to Kenosha County. We need treatment alternatives here. My son ended up in Rockford, Illinois, because there were no long-term inpatient treatment centers here in Kenosha. Every day, a part of your paycheck is spent on keeping young, nonviolent kids in need of treatment, like my son, behind bars. Is that how you want to spend your hard-earned dollars? I will never forget some of Judge Wagner's words to Corey. She told him, "You are 1 in a million. Not too many kids beat this. They end up dead. Your family is lucky you're alive." And I couldn't agree more. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Rel Barrett, 1424 Sheridan Road, Summers, Wisconsin. Very worthwhile causes. I've worked with students myself for 38 years, and what a good part of your time should be spent helping these organizations out, which is kind of why I'm up here too. There was an article in the paper today which just kind of blew me away, so to speak. The fact that we're going to get involved with the Milwaukee streetcar project. I think Milwaukee should take care of their own, and we should take care of our own. We should not get involved with that at all. Let's not dictate to Milwaukee, or it's going to come around to bite us. Milwaukee's going to come along, or Waukesha, or Waukegan maybe, or Whitewater's going to come around and tell us how we should run things around here. I should suggest then that we do not get involved with this incident up there. Then I think there might be hidden motive. I think some people might have stocks and bonds in Wisconsin Electric with these other utilities. I think too that the PSC regulates this. I mean, it's kind of their business. Ever try and deal with Wisconsin Electric and they kind of want to do eminent domain on your property, it's another story if you want to try and fight them. So I'm wholeheartedly in favor of deleting any activity involved with trying to get involved with that. And of course, everybody knows that the streetcars in Kenosha are one of the top 5 draws in the city. Historically, that's been very true. So this would jeopardize future projects, and I have followed streetcar projects, light rail projects around the United States. There is nowhere else that I've ever read where we're going to talk about utilities, especially if we're not even in the same county. So I urge you not to get involved with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Anybody else wishing to speak? Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing nobody, citizens' comments are closed. Announcements of the chair. I will make an announcement. I just wanted to give the board an update. A while back, we had a packet of information put in our board packet regarding a animal shelter in western Kenosha County. And I just wanted to let you know that our sheriff's department with our district attorney worked with the state and spearheaded an investigation. Some violations were found and progress is being made on that. They are going to continue to monitor it. So I just wanted to give the board an update on that. If you have any other questions, you can see me after the meeting, but that's where we're at with that. And that's the only announcement I have. Supervisor reports. Supervisor Brunick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a reminder to everyone that the next meeting, which is May 21st, will be our Youth and Governance reception ahead of time. That will start at 7 o'clock out in the lobby here. After that, the chairman of the board will be appointing these youth to their new committees, so we will have new youth sitting on our committees beginning shortly after that appointment. We are also going to be recognizing our youth that are leaving us. I know that everyone's had a chance to talk with some of these youth over the past year. I think they've done a great job on their committees, and I wish them well in whatever they do. I know some of them are going to go on to be great people and help us with our county and our state. So I just want to remind everyone, 7 o'clock out in the lobby, next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Brunick. Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of notes from the Human Services Committee. On your desks this evening, you'll find the Brookside Care Center financial statements ending 3/31/13. As you can see on the front page, they're currently showing a profit in excess of $146,000, slightly in excess. If you have any questions, please contact Fran Petrick, the administrator of Brookside, or Kelly Diem, the business manager. There are 2 resolutions from the Human Services Committee tonight that are on your desk. We can get to those later. And I just wanted to remind folks, Judge Milsauskas, I believe, has sent out an email about a drug court open house invitation. The date on that is Wednesday, May 29th, 1:30 to 5 p.m. in his courtroom, Branch 4. Additionally, you may have received this in your email as well. The Department of Human Services monthly update for this month, 5/13, has come out. If you have any questions about what's in there, please see John Jansen. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. Why it does that? Shuts it off. Supervisor Ron Frederick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor will notice on their desk, there's a 2012 Kemper Center Annual Report. I hope you'll take time to view it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Seeing Supervisor Hallman.
My apologies, Mr. Chairman, I forgot to add this. I do have some items on my desk from WCA and from NACO that supervisors can have to take with them. It's a number of items. I would like to not have this on my desk tonight, so for those of you that are curious, feel free to stop by and take it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. Seeing no more lights, supervisor reports are closed. Move on to the appointments.
County Executive appointments. Dustin R. Harp to serve on the Kenosha County Housing Authority Board.
Refer to Finance.
Barbara K. Ford to serve on the Kenosha County Zoning Board of Adjustments.
Refer to Planning, Development, and Education.
Dr. Diane Gerlach to serve on the Kenosha County Board of Health. Supervisor John O'Day to serve on the Brookside Board of Trustees. Robert W. Pitts to serve on the Brookside Board of Trustees.
Those 3 items will be referred to the Human Services Committee.
Resolution 1 from Supervisor Decker, a resolution regarding utility ratepayers paying for the cost associated with relocating underground utility for streetcar projects.
Refer to the Executive Committee.
From Human Services.
Hold on. Supervisor Decker.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules.
It's been moved by Supervisor Decker, seconded by Supervisor Skolitsky to suspend the rules. Supervisor Decker.
I'd like to vote on this tonight because it does have a time constraint with the budget being worked on up in Madison, and the proposal will possibly be inserted into the budget, so I'd like to vote on this to send our thoughts on it up to Madison.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Rose.
Normally, I think that resolutions or items on the agenda should be referred to committees for discussion and approval or disapproval, unless there's some extraordinary reason to deal with it immediately because of time constraints. And I heard what Supervisor Decker said, but I'm still unclear if this is referred to committee and with the thought that it be returned to the board at the next meeting. Why is that too late?
Are you asking through the chair to Supervisor Decker?
Yes.
Supervisor Decker?
Because we don't know when they're gonna bring up this idea, this proposal in Madison. So it could be within these 2 weeks between now and the next meeting.
Okay, hold on. At this point, I've been informed that this is not debatable, so we're not going to debate this. We're just going to take the vote. It needs 2/3, so we will take a roll call vote on that. Yes will mean the motion that Supervisor Decker made to suspend the rules. If you vote yes, you will want to suspend the rules and debate on it now. If you vote no, you will want it to go to the committee. And it'll be, as I said, yes, it does take a 2/3 vote. That's why I'm calling for a roll call of those present.
So what is the number?
14.
Okay.
Please continue.
From Human Service Committee, a resolution in support of alternative treatment courts to save state and local taxes. Hallman, yes. Boyd Frederick, yes. Anita Johnson, yes. Decker, no. Arrington, yes. Nudo, no. Montemero, yes.
Supervisor Hallman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move Resolution 2.
Resolution 123 has been moved by Supervisor Hallman, seconded by Supervisor Anita Johnson. Supervisor Hallman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution comes to us from the community advocacy group CUSH, who's part of a larger statewide network called Wisdom that has been going around the state and petitioning not just county government but also state government to take on treatment and diversion programs. As many of you are well aware, we've already approved a drug court, we've approved a mental health court, and we've also approved a veterans court. It is due to the efforts of CUSH and Wisdom that those things have actually taken place. Right now, those exist primarily through the use of federal funds through the Attorney General's office. What the group has been seeking to do is to basically ask the state to, in a sense, cough up the political will and make a commitment to fund it. So essentially, it would be a Wisconsin homegrown initiative as opposed to just relying on federal grant funds. So that is essentially what this is. It's something that we're already doing. All we're asking is for the legislature to make a commitment and put some Wisconsin funds to this so that we can help more people and not just have to rely on the federal government. And at this time, I'll entertain any questions that folks may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. Supervisor Arrington?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I supported this resolution in committee. There was a few things that we had an opportunity to discuss. I guess my approach to this personally as a humanitarian and as a person who believes in the positive outreach that we provide to our constituents, I believe this is, as I said in committee, the right thing to do. I believe that some supervisors are against it because there was some information that was unclear at the time, things that were mentioned that there was no data to support us asking the state of Wisconsin to participate in this effort. The one thing that I want to point out is that drug use, drug abuse, it touches every family, it touches every life in some way, form, or fashion. I believe that this is something that we need to do. I'm urging every supervisor to examine themselves and see how do you feel about supporting something that will definitely impact and help the people in the community in Kenosha County. I believe it will send the correct message that Kenosha County Board of Supervisors is on board when it comes to supporting things that will impact the community in an effort to help people with their drug addictions and et cetera. So I urge you to vote yes for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Arrington. Supervisor Brunig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, for one, am all for supporting people and giving them second chances, but I do have a couple questions. Through the chair to the chairman of the committee, could you please tell me where are we going to get the funding that is going to be redeployed, the $75 million?
The studies have shown that for every dollar that we spend on treatment and diversion programs, we actually save $2 in our criminal justice system. Therefore, the logic is that we would take money from, right now, our State Department of Corrections and move it over to the judiciary so that we could do more of these kinds of things.
So which programs are going to be eliminated then?
I don't necessarily know that any would need to be eliminated per se. We'd be saving on corrections costs by having treatment and diversion programs. So it would be essentially strengthening the savings that we would have by doing that. You're cutting your corrections costs in half.
I guess I don't quite understand, because when you move money from one place, you are shutting down something to move it to another place.
Let me try to explain. I think what he's saying is there's going to be cost savings there. It's like if I'm going to redo a road and it costs $100,000 and I figure out a way to do it for $50,000, I can take that other $50,000 and move it over. Is that your explanation? Okay.
Yes.
Are there studies that have been done that have shown cost savings for this program?
Yes, actually, the University of Wisconsin Population Health Institute has a valuation report dated December 2011, which is a collaborative of the Wisconsin Office of Justice Assistance, the Wisconsin Department of Corrections, and the Wisconsin Department of Health Services to analyze treatment and diversion programs in the state. It's one of the reasons why this has had so much momentum.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Brunig. Supervisor Nudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In committee, I voted against this resolution, and I'm going to vote against it tonight again. This resolution was first brought up to the committee at the March meeting. We had an extensive discussion. There was many unanswered questions, and then it was unanimously decided to table it indefinite until all the questions will be answered. The following meeting in April, pretty much the same resolution came by. Still no answers on what we had asked for. So therefore, until this is resolved, I'm going to be voting against the resolution.
Thank you, Supervisor Nudo. Supervisor Decker.
I voted against this in committee because I don't want to be one that takes $75 million out of our corrections. I don't think we should be taking $75 million out of corrections and shifting it over to human services. And the first resolution we saw had no mention of drug treatment courts or any of these alternative courts. And we get this new one where all the whereases talk about drug treatment courts and things like that, but the be it resolves are still the same that were in our last resolution. And if you look, there's no mention in the resolves asking the state to spend it on drug treatment courts or the other treatment courts. So this is just shifting money from the Department of Corrections to the Human Services umbrella. And I'm not voting to take money out of Department of Corrections. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Anita Johnson.
I just want to call to everybody's attention that Maricopa County, who is home to one of the most controversially strict, and actually somebody that I quite applaud on his policies towards the treatment of inmates, he's extremely strict, and they have implemented DUI courts in his county. And the reason for that is it actually saves us money. It actually saves us money to deter them to programs when they're still at a point where they can benefit from it and not become lifelong inmates, which oftentimes they do if they don't receive the treatment. And, you know, we were sent a lot of studies that show, I've read anywhere on the government websites from 30% less recidivism when we implement these programs at early enough stages. We're talking about low-risk, nonviolent offenders. This is both the fiscally responsible thing and the socially conscionable thing to do to help our citizens.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Rose.
I'm in support of this resolution. I think it is long overdue. What is the current situation? Drug use in this community and this state is rampant. Most crimes are committed in this community are drug-related. I am often surprised in dealing with people in criminal and civil cases in the office, the extent of drug use in this community by people you might be very surprised at. And the same is true of the excessive use of alcohol. We have a culture here which makes us socially acceptable, and that's got to stop if we are going to change the excessive use of alcohol and the use of drugs. The fastest growing crime in this community, in this country, is the unlawful use of prescription drugs. Somebody takes it from somebody's medicine cabinet, they purchased it by prescription, and sells it to somebody else at school, at work, or on the street corner. The drug treatment courts in this community are really in their infant stages. We're just scratching the surface. You can say, well, I don't want to take this from the prison budget, the corrections budget, because they deal with these cases in a harsh fashion, and they do. Second offense, possession of any amount of marijuana is a felony. Do you know what that does to somebody's chances for employment, for a student loan, for subsidized housing, for an ordinary job at a place like McDonald's? These people, for a simple thing like second offense possession of marijuana, are condemned for a lifetime under the current situation. We deal with cases very harshly today in this community. Do we have fewer crimes being committed? We have more crimes. We have more drug-related crimes and more alcohol-related crimes, which also spill over into the civil arena, the civil courts, the family courts, the divorce courts, the juvenile courts. The CHIPS cases are loaded with alcohol-related and drug use related cases. So when people say, well, we got to get tough and we got to get tougher, we've been doing that. And all we've been doing is creating a larger and larger group of people with criminal records. There's a book called Criminalization of America. It's happening everywhere. We're not dealing with the problem as it's currently being handled. We're dealing with it in a harsh way, and we failed. But what we have done is disabled a lot of people from permanent rehabilitation, getting their lives back on track. We've got to make the use of drugs socially unacceptable, the excessive use of alcohol socially unacceptable, and I would suggest to you that in this community it's not. This is a long overdue resolution. It's an attempt to change the direction of way things are going and recognize that the way things are going is not working.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Montemuro.
Thank you, Chairman. I applaud what you say, Supervisor Rose, and it's true. Our community's been suffering for years. I've been the medical director at the Salvation Army Clinic since 2006. And firsthand, I can tell you, I handle many patients there that are either on an option program or had just gotten out of jail. And I've got to tell you, no matter what I do to help these people, the gratitude that they feel when you give them a hand and it comes back to you, I actually get more out of it than they do. So I am telling you that there's a body of people that just want a helping hand. And it serves to change their life. I cannot tell you how many said, oh my God, nobody's ever just helped me for free before or just gave me a hand. And that has stuck with me for years. In 25 years of taking care of family members in this community, across the board, rich, privileged, any kind of patient, somebody has somebody who has drugs in their family, and it has devastated their families. The federal government's working on trying to decrease prescription drugs and the DEA. So for Wisconsin to take an upfront approach to offer alternatives, to give people second hand, to start changing the way things have been going, I think is a plus all the way around. And if the proof is it costs less to keep them out of jail than in jail, I don't think we're going to be losing money. I think we're going to be making money. So I strongly support this resolution, and I support the idea behind it, that it's time to help people when it's appropriate. If they take that help and they abuse it repeatedly, they'll be in the prison system. But if not, and they just need that first step, then I'm all for giving it to them, and for forgiving them and their families and giving people a chance. So I strongly support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Montemuro. Supervisor Skalitsky.
I have my questions answered.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want this moment to pass without addressing some of the concerns that my two fellow committee members who dissented in their vote raised this evening. I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page. This is the second draft of this resolution that we're discussing tonight. The first one that was brought to committee, as far as the language goes, I'll be honest with you. I submitted it, but I didn't write it, and I had some concerns about it, and those concerns were raised in committee. Thanks to Corporation Counsel, this is a much better resolution. The first draft, there are other counties that have passed that in our state. Obviously, we won't be one of them. That's not what we're debating tonight. We're debating this one, the second draft. There was some conversation about potentially waiting for our Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee, which we've had in this community for quite some time, which is made up of the DA, some of our judges, law enforcement, and some other folks, to meet. But after understanding what the timeline is for the state budget and that the governor is very emphatic about having it approved by June 1st, we felt that a second draft to be brought to the Human Services Committee, discussed, voted on, and brought to this body while the budget was still being debated would be helpful, not only for us, but also for our legislators to make sure that they receive that message before it was too late. So that is why, to a certain extent, my two fellow committee members, from what I understand, dissented in their vote. And I hear some of their disagreement, and we tried to address it as best we could. So for those who have any questions as to why, that's more of the backstory behind how you got what you got on your desks.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. Supervisor Arrington?
No.
Seeing no more lights, especially since I wiped them off. We have a roll call requested.
Service Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Brooke and Facino to the Kenosha County Workforce Development Board. Hallman, yes. Boyd Frederick, yes. Anita Johnson, yes. Decker, yes. Arrington, yes. Nudo, yes. Montemiro, yes.
Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Move resolution number 3.
That's actually 124. Resolution 124 has been...
Three.
It's 3?
It's a new year.
Bernie. Okay, resolution number 3 has been moved by Supervisor Hallman, seconded by Supervisor Nudo. Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution to approve the county executive appointment of Brooke Infazino to the Workforce Development Board. Ms. Infazino will serve as the CABA representative on the Workforce Development Board, replacing Todd Battle. The Human Services Committee approved this appointment and recommends approval by the county board.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. Seeing no lights, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution 3 is passed.
Communications from County Executive Jim Cruiser regarding declaration of emergency in Kenosha County.
I'll receive and file this communication. I'd also like to congratulate Lieutenant Van Tyne and our emergency services for their job during that emergency. I think they did a very good job. So
Claims, oops, I'm sorry.
please continue.
Claims, Sharon Beth, vehicle damage.
Refer to Corporation Council.
Approval of the April 16th, 2013 annual and organizational minutes by Supervisor Hallman.
Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's no objection, a motion to approve the April 16, 2013 minutes of the annual and organizational meeting of the Kenosha County Board.
Motion by Supervisor Hallman, seconded by Vice Chair Kubicki. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. Been moved by Supervisor Underhill, seconded by Supervisor Brunig to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed?